I'd like to show you how I quilted block 4 of my Meadow Minis pattern. And this block is a very simple zigzag design. And the first step of quilting this design is to quilt in the ditch along the zigzag areas. Now, I usually quilt maybe a hairline more toward the outside of the zigzag rather than inside the zigzag. But you can do the inside if you'd prefer. So I'm making sure that my ruler is always 1/4 of an inch away from the seam that I'm wanting to stitch on or right along. It is 1/4 of an inch from the needle to the edge of my foot. So that means my stitches will be positioned just right. Now when I get to the end of the row, I'll be echoing my zigzag line. So I'll be creating that same line, but 1/2 inch away. And so I want to take that first line on the ruler and align it with my seam, because that means the stitching line that I produce will be 1/2 inch away from my original line. So you can see there the ruler's actually overlapping the seam by 1/4 of an inch, and that 1/4 of an inch plus the 1/4 of an inch from the needle to the edge of the foot gives you a 1/2 inch echo. And so I'm going to work this step over the entire area. I'm first going to do all the in the ditch lines, and then I'm going to do all the echoing lines. Once I finish this process, I'm going to go along those lines I've previously stitched to travel to the base of these diamond areas. And the diamonds, the divisions between the diamonds, I have not stitched in the ditch. So actually the entire diamond is puffy. And what I want to do here is create a curved design that will contrast with the straight line designs that are in the zigzag pattern. So I'm going to use this little curve on the 4-in-1. The big curve is just, it's too shallow. It won't give enough of a curve. So I'm going to use this little bump kind of on the foot of this ruler. And I'm going to quilt from that corner to the center. And then I'm going to rotate the ruler, and I'm going to quilt to the opposite corner. Now, in general, I try to rotate my ruler into a position where I'll have a pretty smooth line. So I try not to stitch with too many points, because it's hard to make the points align, and it's really noticeable if some of them don't. So instead, I try to stick to things that will appear like curves. So here, you'll notice I'm going to rotate the ruler so I can do another kind of curved line. This takes practice, and honestly, it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of doing things wrong before you do things right. You realize, what mistakes will be noticeable and what won't. So here I'm going to come back to the center. I have one more petal to do before I begin to get back to my starting point. So again, I'm choosing to do the curve when I can. And then come back to center. And now come back to my starting point. And this, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a turn here. Sorry, my hand's blocking you a little bit, but only for a minute. And now I'm going to use my straight line ruler to quilt up the quilt and then back down again to get to the point of the next diamond. And that's how I complete all the diamonds. I travel from diamond to diamond. Now here, I'm doing my final step in quilting this block, and that's the free motion fill. And I just did a simple back and forth pattern. I mean, you can do feathers in these areas, you can do leaves, but sometimes when the blocks themselves are this small, it's fine just to do a simple pattern, because that's going to create texture. It's going to allow the edges of those zigzags to puff up a little bit, and the middle will be pressed down. It's just a lovely look.